If there is one kind of category of skincare that I think that you should definitely have in your skincare routine, especially in the summer, it is pigment inhibitors. Now, I've talked about this for years and years and years, but it is particularly important in the summer and in the fall. Honestly, it's important all year long, but in the summer, it's especially important so that we can alleviate and stave off excess pigment and kind of not collect as much hyperpigmentation that we then have to correct in the fall. So having good pigment inhibitors on board is crucial. Today, I wanted to share with you what a pigment inhibitor can do, why you should have it in your routine, and then I will share with you a few of the pigment inhibitors that I am using in my routine. Now, I am coming at you not only as an esthetician, but also as someone who has been in this battle for most of my adult life. I started this channel 7 years ago with videos on clearing my melasma and my hyperpigmentation. I've really gotten to the point where I keep my pigment pretty much under wraps because I am constantly using a pigment inhibitor in my routine, morning and night. So there's a couple things that I think that you really need to know to understand the whole process. Number one is you need to understand that there is something called tyrosinase. It is an enzyme in our skin and it is really crucial in the production of melanin. And if we can kind of control tyrosinase, if we can inhibit it, if we can neutralize it, then we will be able to control the excess production of pigment. So tyrosinase is one of those things that's huge. So anytime you see pigment inhibitor and you see that it helps to control tyrosinase, that's a good thing. The other thing that's really important to know is that there is something called melanocyte stimulating hormone, or MSH. Now, all that is, it is a peptide hormone that is responsible for kind of being part of the process that involves tyrosinase. Now, this is all stuff that kind of gets in the weeds. What you just need to know is there are products on the market now that include ingredients that help to mitigate both MSH and tyrosinase. And so those are the products that we are going to talk about today. You want to look for alpha arbutin. Alpha arbutin is one of those really fantastic ingredients, and it is a tyrosinase inhibitor. Something else that you can look for is Uva Ursi or Bearberry. Those are both really rich in arbutin, so they are tyrosinase inhibitors. And because they are really good at brightening the skin, because they have so much arbutin in them, they are just a great natural tyrosinase inhibitor, and over time they can help to brighten the skin and lighten hyperpigmentation. Now, be aware that no matter what, this all takes time. The average skin cycle when we get older, when you are my age, I'm almost 51, it is going to be probably closer to 40 days than it is back at 28 days when I was younger. So you can imagine that if it's 40 days for those cells that are just being made today, 40 days from now, they're going to show themselves on the surface. So what I am doing today is what you're going to see on my face in 40 days. So you really have to have some patience with these pigment inhibitors because they're going to work at the base and those cells have to make their way to the surface for people to see them. So always have patience when you're using pigment inhibitors. Now, another ingredient that you can look for is Kojic Acid. It is a fantastic tyrosinase inhibitor. You can look for Resveratrol. That's an antioxidant, but it is also one of those ingredients that is really going to promote healthy skin. You can also look for an ingredient called nonapeptide 1. Now, nonapeptide 1 is a really interesting ingredient in skincare, mostly because it is a peptide, and so it's a little bit more gentle than some other kind of more harsh like hydroquinone type ingredients that go in and inhibit tyrosinase. Nonapeptide 1 actually inhibits the entire process from even starting. So I'm going to show you a cheesy little clip that I made because I think it's kind of interesting. If you think about a melanocyte, it has these little receptors on it. Those receptors are waiting for the melanocyte stimulating hormone to come along and bind to them like a key in a lock. opening up the cell to start this cascade series of events that ultimately results in the production of pigment. Now, if you came up to, in this case, this clock of mine, and the key is already in the lock, and the melanocyte stimulating hormone is like, hey, I can't get into that lock, there's already a key in it. That is nonapeptide 1. Nonapeptide 1 effectively blocks the melanocyte stimulating hormone from being able to engage with the receptor site and open up and start this series of events. It's kind of a confusing process, but basically it stands in the way of the entire process even kicking off. So the tyrosinase can't be activated, all of those things can't happen. Nonapeptide 1 is probably one of the most interesting pigment inhibiting ingredients that I have come across for a very, very long time, because it's super duper gentle and it really does like stop the process at the beginning at the receptor site, which is just, you know, it's mind blowing. And I know that that's a lot of like details, but just know that is a different pathway than, you know, some of these other ingredients like alpha arbutin or niacinamide or kojic acid, resveratrol. They all work a little bit differently to help to stop the process of the overproduction of pigment from even happening at the base level of our skin. The question is, what are some good pigment inhibitors on the market? Number one, I want you to know that you can look for these ingredients in your own skincare and then be diligent with that skincare. That's the most important thing. The skincare has to be on your skin morning and night in order for this to work. In order for you to see some results, you have to be diligent with it. The reason for that is, imagine that there is a door. Imagine at the front door, and pigment, the stimulating pigment, you know, is knocking constantly. It wants to come in and it wants to produce excess pigment. So, okay, at night, you lock the door. You don't let any of that, you know, knock in excess pigment. You lock the door. But in the morning, you leave the door unlocked. You're not as vigilant. You don't care. And so it just opens the door and it makes its way in. And there you have a little bit of that pigment marching forward with those cells. As long as that continues to happen, you will continue to have irregular skin as far as pigment is concerned. So you want to keep that door locked morning and night so that no excess pigment, no matter how hard it's knocking, is able to march forward with those cells that are being created right now. Okay, so pigment inhibitor on board, AM and PM, super important. Now, there are some products, in my opinion, that are better than others at doing this job. And that's what I'm gonna share with you today. Number one, Fade Bright. This is from Platinum. Now, this is pretty exciting because they've recently reformulated this. I put this on my landing page over on Platinum. I will link that down below. But just know that the cocktail in here is stellar. First of all, the price point is pretty great. You get 2 ounces, and I want to say it's around 38 bucks, but you also can get 4.5 ounces, which I just now ordered because that is perfect for doing your body. Now, for your arms, for your décolleté, if you are planning to do the décolleté peel with me in September, late September, a great thing to do is to pre-treat wherever you're going to peel with a pigment inhibitor. Now, in this one, there is kojic acid, there's resveratrol, there's alpha arbutin, there is also gram-active retinoid, or HPR. Now, it is at 1%. It's a very low percentage. It is not going to replace your dedicated retinoid, but it is in there, and it is in its own right a pigment inhibitor. Now, this has several other, it has glutathione. I have loved glutathione. I think I did a video on glutathione probably like 3 or 4 years ago because it is such a fantastic pigment inhibitor. It is a great, great antioxidant. It's so good for producing radiant, vibrant skin. Just a beautiful ingredient. All of them are in here at a pretty reasonable price point. Now, when we look at the consistency, you will see that it is kind of like a gel serum. I would say it's closer to a serum than it is a gel. And once you massage it in, it is very, very light and it disappears. It does have SD alcohol in there. It will not dry out your skin. It does not dry out the skin. I have been using it. That is in there for a formulation reason, to keep it really, really lightweight. It has squalane and glycerin as well, so it is hydrating the skin. It is comfortable on the skin, and most importantly, it is so lightweight that it is easy to layer on the skin morning and night. Because if you're like me, especially in the morning, I don't want 800 layers before I put on my SPF, and if I want to wear makeup, I want lightweight layers, and that is what this is. It is really, really a great product. Okay, so that's Fade Bright. Now, you guys know that I use Cysteamine. Cysteamine is in a category all its own. It is a pigment inhibitor. It works completely different than everything that we're talking about today. If you're interested in learning about Cysteamine, I will link that video. But essentially, Cysteamine is a pigment inhibitor, and it works in a completely different way, and you put it on as a mask. You leave it on for 20 minutes or so, you take it off, you move on with your skincare routine. Now, that is something that I use, but I use that in addition to all of this. I'm not leaving out anything because I have such chronic hyperpigmentation that I throw everything at it. You do not need to do that. Just putting that out there because I know somebody's going to ask me about the Cysteamine. Okay, next we're going to talk about Remedy. Now this is relatively new to me, but this is Dr. Shaw's Doctorly. It is his brand, and this is his dark spot product. It's Remedy for dark spots. So this is a treatment that you put on every single night, and really it's kind of an all-in-one. This one has in it a retinol. So a retinol is a version of vitamin A, and that is a pigment inhibitor in its own right. So it serves to block tyrosinase or help with the inhibition of tyrosinase. But then this also has in it several of the pigment inhibitors that we've talked about. This has in it, gotta put on my glasses. This has in it the retinol. It has mandelic acid, which is going to help to exfoliate kind of the surface and kind of help to get off that surface pigment, which exfoliation is a big deal. Frankly, we're not even talking about exfoliation in this video. We're talking about pigment inhibiting, but exfoliation is another thing that is super duper important when you're trying to clear excess pigment. I will do a whole video on the entire process of clearing pigment and the entire kind of like my routine, especially going into fall. This year I did things a little bit differently. I've been really extremely diligent this summer trying to keep myself from having to recover my skin in the fall. So that's where we are right now. And I've been doing a pretty good job. My skin is staying in pretty good shape. Okay, so this also has Kojic Acid. It has that glutathione that we just talked about. This also has licorice root. That is a great pigment inhibitor, but it also helps to soothe the skin and helps with irritation and inflammation. This has tranexamic acid, great pigment inhibitor in a different way than some of these others. Then this has niacinamide. It's vitamin B3, another great pigment inhibitor, but it works in a different way than these other pigment inhibitors. So when you have pigment inhibitors, lots of them work in one way, and then some of them work on another part of the pathway, and then some of them work on the MSH, some of them work directly on tyrosinase. They work in different ways. So when you see a cocktail, it's a really good thing because they're coming at the problem from so many different ways that it helps to just tackle it in general. So this one is an excellent option. It is in one of those little twisty like this. The price point is, I want to say it's also $38. It is 1 ounce. Fade Bright is 2 ounces, so you get a lot more for your money in here. But I know that a lot of you have been interested in trying out Dr. Shaw's line. It looks beautiful. The thing I do like about it is that because it's the retinol, it's the mandelic, and then it's all those pigment inhibitors, this is kind of a multitasking product that is meant to be your nighttime routine in lieu of some of those other things. So it's supposed to be more of an all-in-one, take place of your retinol and your pigment inhibitors. So effectively you should be saving some money because you're not buying more than one product kind of thing. Okay, so this one's about 38 bucks and it is a little tiny bit thicker than the Fade Bright, you can see. You really are supposed to use like a pea-sized amount for your entire face. And like I said, it is your every night routine. That said, that means that you still have to have a morning pigment inhibitor on board. You do not want to leave that door unlocked for that pigment that's knocking to get into the house and cause a little bit of havoc and a little bit of excess hyperpigmentation to come forward next month. Okay, so that is the remedy from Dr. Shah. Finally, the last one, I have several, you guys, that I just grabbed from, but the last one that I'm going to tell you about is one that's available to you in the UK and will be soon available here in the United States, if not already, and it is by the brand Celderma. This is by the much acclaimed Dr. Dev Patel. He is an award-winning, amazing formulator and doctor in the UK. He's out of Portsmouth, and I've been using this Pigment Correct. I'm like, the bottle's down to about right here. I grab for this one all the time. I really, really like it. Now this one takes a little bit different of an approach, which is why I wanted to share it with you today. This one has that nonapeptide 1 in it. So you don't see that everywhere. That is not an ingredient that is out there, and I'm predicting that it will be. Now this also has Uva Ursi, it's Bearberry, which is rich in Arbutin, which we know is a great pigment inhibitor. So if you are somebody who really, really likes serums, and you're interested in a super duper gentle, very soothing type product, this is a great option. And if you live in the UK, this is readily available to you. It's mostly sold in doctor's offices. It's carried by doctor's offices and just is starting to make its way to our shores here in the United States. I'm very, very excited to be bringing it here soon. What I want for you is that you look in the description box, look at the list of pigment inhibitors that I'm gonna put down there, my preferred pigment inhibitors. Then you can go and you can search through the products that you already own, and you can also search for other products knowing what you need to look for in a pigment inhibitor. If you don't want to do any of that, these are 3 fantastic options. We can clear excess pigment. We just have to have the right products on board, AM and PM, and we have to be diligent and patient. Let me know if you have any questions down below. I will put everything in the description box, some additional information. Let me know if you want a deeper dive, if you'd like a blog post, if you want a little bit more of the science of how this all happens, that kind of thing. I'm happy to do that. I just didn't want to bore people. I think people like to get right to it. All right, you guys, I hope you're having a really fantastic day, and I'll talk to you in my next skincare video. Take care.